Losing myself, I'm losing myself tonight.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Rare and Real. We thank you so much for being here. This is episode 2 of our podcast, and I'm very excited because the last one went pretty well, and it was easier to do than I thought it was going to be. So, yay. We're excited to do more with you guys. Thank you all once again for joining us. My name is Nate Milam, here with my incredible co-host.
Hey, I'm Carter Hemian.
And we are very excited for another episode of Rare and Real. Last month, we came to you guys introducing SOS and our mission, our plan, our Rare and Radiant campaign, which was amazing. And just to lay the groundwork, set the structure of our community, and more specifically, the intersections within that community. This month, we have an episode for you diving into the complexities of being queer and rare, and also what that looks like when it comes to having to disclose your queerness. In this society that we live in, coming out is a common trend that LGBTQIA plus individuals face. We don't all encounter this. Certain dynamics and environments and situations dictate the level of comfort and ability that is present for us to be able to make decisions like fully disclose our identity to individuals that we know. Coming out is a concept that helps queer individuals gain a sense of authenticity, a sense of freedom. I've heard lots of people say that a weight has been lifted, and I definitely relate to that. But I will also acknowledge the fact that coming out culture is something that should not have to be done. We don't have straight people coming out, and that no one bats an eye. So, one of the things that I just really wanted to bring to the table today was the fact that those who are both queer and rare, unfortunately, have to come out multiple times. And I know this isn't specific to queer and rare individuals, but this definitely impacts the care that we receive if we don't. Disclosing your identity allows physicians to know exactly what kind of care that you need, and building this connection can greatly impact care for the better, but it's not always easy to get there. And let's face it, we live in a world today where not everybody's going to be accepting, so there's lots of challenges surrounding that. So yeah, we have that to bring to you today. And before I really get into the nitty gritty, I want to, Carter, loving this shirt, by the way. Please tell us what is on your mind and how you feel about our conversation, how you felt about our launch last month of the podcast, and what coming out means to you, why it's important to you.
Yeah, this has been a very exciting time for me to see this platform growing the last weeks, months. It brings me a lot of hope and a lot of joy to be in a space with people who get it and who understand, and where we don't have to explain all of this all the time, especially because coming out is not something that happens just once. It's something that is a repeated process. I can't count the amount of times that I've had to come out and explain my identities and sit in uncertainty, not knowing what the response is going to be. I think also coming out is something that, while it should be a choice, it isn't always, and sometimes it's something that we're forced into or outed or pressured into, which should never be the case, but is just kind of an unfortunate reality of once word starts getting out, sometimes situations get a little bit complicated. And then at the intersection of rare and queer, it's something that it gets I don't know, more layers to it and how we navigate healthcare, whether we're out first and that impacts diagnosis or we're out later and that impacts care. There's a lot of layers to it and a lot of ways that we experience it across the community, especially adding other layers of identity on top.
That's right. This topic is really important to me just because no one really prepares you for this. No one prepares. I feel like unless you have a queer icon or a queer mentor of some sort in your life, no one is out here preparing queers for anything. It's sort of blindly figuring out life as it goes through trial and error and finding out who is, providing space that's comfortable for you to really open up and be yourself. So this is an unfortunate fact or reality that we have to come out multiple times in order to even receive quality care. But yeah, I think this is just really important, and we're really excited to bring this to you guys. So I guess I'll start and take you guys on a little journey into my past. Let's rewind for a second, Magic School Bus style. And I grew up in a predominantly Black community. I live in Maryland, so I think we happen to have just a really large Black population, and the specific county that I'm in, it's majority Black. So from elementary school up until high school, I was in the majority of the population, being most of the students were Black, and we had a handful of white students. For a long time, I didn't even think about queerness. I didn't really have any references for what it was to be, gay or any identity under that spectrum. My parents weren't talking about being queer. I didn't really see a lot of it on TV at the time. And in school, there just wasn't much talk about it other than rare instances where individuals would be mistreated, either for being queer or for, quote, appearing to be. And people would use derogatory language in tandem with queerness. So that was kind of the only exposure I had to that world. And for me, although I'm very sure I was presenting really early, I didn't really think about it. I guess I was so wrapped up in, my healthcare life that I just wasn't made aware. But I ended up transferring schools to a predominantly white area. My sophomore year of high school, I transferred to another county in Maryland, and it was further down south. And I shifted from being in the majority to being in the minority, a reflection of life. And it was definitely a shock. It wasn't something that I was used to. And not only was I in the minority, I also was struggling to figure out my place of belonging, because I just felt like I was so different and also new. I moved schools a lot when I was younger. So I kind of found comfort in the fact that this school happened to be one that created a club called the GSA, Gay Straight Alliance. And it was definitely a moment where I was looking around like, hey, this is a place where they're saying, we have leadership at the school saying, hey, it's okay to be gay. And not that I was thinking about, being queer at the time. I was still very much chasing girls. But when the GSA was initiated, I joined it as an ally, of course, to support a friend who needed support. And me and a couple of other friends were there to support this person. All the while, I am chasing, for lack of better words, dramatic, I'm, longing after a girl who I really wanted to go to prom with, and we had been close friends for a minute, and we just had this really magical connection. Now, to spare us some time and to make sure I have some time for Carter, I will just say that after finding the courage to ask her out and being rejected, womp womp, a few months later, she ends up coming out as a lesbian, and I only then started. I don't know. I had always is a stretch because not always, but since moving to the school, I started having thoughts that would like pass me by really really fleetingly about curiosity with men. I would find men attractive, but I couldn't really get on the level of like I want to date men. It wasn't until after my crush had come out that I started really paying attention about what I was around and my feelings, and I did a lot of internal work and realized that I was also gay because I honestly could not picture, I that was just the path for me. I was living inauthentically, and when I finally made that discovery, it was like, oh wait, it was like I really feel like this is who Nate is supposed to be. And then I slowly came out to people around me who I cared about. My parents were like the last people I told because we didn't really have that close connected relationship where I felt comfortable telling them, hey, parents, I'm gay. But I did start with my friends at school. I started with, well, I think my sister was the first person to know. And then after her telling me that she had already knew, I was able to tell, the rest of my friends at school. It's a mixed bag. Lots of people had already known. So I was kind of like just hiding from myself, I guess. But it was an interesting experience, and I'm grateful for it because I don't know if I would have fully gotten there or how easy it would have been to get there if I had not switched schools. And now, Carter, what are you thinking? And first of all, do you have any questions about my story? And second of all, I want to hear your story before we get into our next phase of coming out. You have the floor.
Well, this is my first time hearing this story from you.
Yeah, some things I gotta keep locked away. I gotta surprise you for some of these things.
Yeah. What was it like for you in kind of finding who you were meant to be? What was that? What did that process feel like internally for you?
It felt very confusing. Like I said, I really have a lot of experience or people to really look up to in that way or get assistance from. And over my life, I had to do a lot of introspective work just because of everything that I've been through. But one of the things I talk about a lot is confidence and building your confidence, and how if you are truly authentic, that really helps build on that confidence. And when I was deciding is crazy, but when I was figuring out, what it was that I liked, it wasn't even like, let me stop and think about, do I still like girls? But it was clearly I am attracted to men. I am attracted to, just male media, and I was trying to picture my life in the future. I have only my closest friendships in my life have only been with females, cis females, right? And when I was coming to terms with who I was as a person, I was like, I am looking at these people and love them to death, but I cannot imagine me waking up every morning or continuing with my life, coming downstairs and seeing like my quote unquote wife making breakfast. Like, as great as that may be, that doesn't, that's not doing it for me. And I was just thinking, and this is before I even came out, I'm like, I am envisioning this future of me walking down the freaking stairs in the morning and seeing the fucking man in the kitchen, like sitting down across the breakfast table with a man in a newspaper, even though I don't think newspapers are going to be like around at that point in time. But like that's what I picture, and it was just when I think about all the details and all of the factors like intimacy, like going out, like what do I picture? Who's holding my hand? Who is when I'm at a concert? Like who's with me? Like I want like I just this is what I'm thinking about. So it was interesting because I didn't really have a moment before where I really did this much introspection, and also interesting just because I realized that I was comfortable reaching that conclusion because I was surrounded by people who were comfortable being themselves also. And providing a club in the school for queers, even though we're not idiots, we know that everybody in the school isn't like queer friendly. Not everybody in that freaking school is like yay gays. They just said this is important for gays in the school. We're going to have this club. So even though there may have still been some conflict or trouble outside of those club walls, they definitely gave people, especially me, a place to discover and belong. And yeah, it was a quick experience right when it happened, from the time me crushing on this girl to the time becoming out. It actually was very fast after that. But I feel like it's because I had been sitting on this thought for at least a couple of years and just not really knowing what to do with it. So yeah.
I feel like that's a theme that a lot of us experience, is sitting on the thought and not knowing what to do.
Yeah, it was challenging, and I did all the things like at the time. Coming out on YouTube was like the thing, and it's just so crazy because I literally feel almost ancient saying this because TikTok wasn't around. Um, TikTok didn't exist, so I couldn't like make a fucking TikTok about But I made a YouTube video, and I was like, "This is me. I'm Nate. This is my coming out story," and I literally tell every excruciating detail of my coming out story, and I cried on camera. I literally had the video up for like years, and then one day I went back to look at it, and I was like, I'm literally sobbing on camera right now. and so I took it down because I was like, yikes. No, but it was definitely a formative experience, and I'm grateful I had it, even though I did come out in high school better. I guess there's no timeline, right? So I'm just grateful that I was able to do it when I did, especially because after doing it, it helped with my confidence, just naturally sitting in who I feel like I have been all along. What about you, Carter? What was your experience like?
The timeline's a little bit, I think, different, and kind of like I knew myself, but I didn't know the words for it. I remember being in elementary school, and most of my friends were boys, so people talked, and I know there were people talking about like, oh, how I must be like a lesbian because of that. And I remember hearing words like gay and lesbian getting thrown around as like mean things to call someone, and the kinds of debates, because people hear things from their parents and pick that up and start repeating stuff on all sides of opinions. And I remember being in elementary school and people asking me like, oh, do you wish you were born a boy? And I'd be like, yeah, so what? And just, it's just one of those things. And also, as people started having their crushes, being like, I don't really see the difference of like how I feel toward like boys versus girls. This is a problem for later me.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 13, I had friends who started coming out as bi and started allowing myself to kind of explore that. And, initially it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm asexual, but we're not going to think about that. Then by the time I was like 14, the gender stuff had just gotten more and more obvious of not really feeling like I fit, and just knowing that it was always there, and it was even something that other people had been picking up on, but now there was finally a word for it, and there was this discovery that there are other people who feel the way I do, and there are options of I can live my life another way. I don't have to, live my life trying to keep pretending to be like a feminine woman and all of this. So when I was 14, I started coming out as trans. I started with friends, with school counselors, decided, what the heck, I'm gonna come out to all my teachers. So a little bit after a couple months into freshman year of high school, maybe like November, I came out to all my teachers. Kind of mixed bag. Some of them who were like, cool, like, let me introduce you to this other trans student that I had who's like a senior, whatever. On the other side, having, a teacher who very intentionally said not very kind things and refused to use my chosen name and, kind of doxed me one time. It was a little bit weird.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yay.
Like,
Crazy.
Not so carefully showing my personal, like, contact and home information a little publicly, while also, like, only using, like, my legal name and calling me young lady and singling me out.
That's
But, like,
terrible.
overall majority were just, like, fine. They don't really care. Because it doesn't really affect anything in the classroom outside of, like, what they call me, which is not really relevant to the content or the education or how I do my work. It's just the name and the pronouns I was choosing to go by. Overall, pretty benign. There were some times where, we're up front, like, hey, you're the first trans student I've had. What do you want me to know? With other students, it was a little bit awkward. I think especially in those first few months of figuring out, before I was out to the teachers and out to all my classmates, but starting to come out, the reactions were quite a range of like, okay, cool, whatever, to like outing me to other people because they were offended about it. And, once words started getting out, you come out to a couple of people, and next thing you know, a bunch of people know. So it's just like, okay, I may as well just come out to everyone. Then I started getting involved with our GSA too, and just talking to more people, and kind of became really open about it really fast, which, I don't regret it, but it was definitely not something that I was prepared for, to end up having to represent a whole community of people as I was still barely figuring out who I was, and to be asked by adults to, mentor other kids and be a role model and a community representative and an advocate and step into all of these roles so quickly. It was a lot. And then at the same time, I was still figuring out, like, sexuality and where I was on that, and, dating people, and didn't really figure it out till college, after going out with people and hooking up with people of different genders and kind of going like, okay, yeah, this was like, I'm definitely asexual.
Yeah.
It took quite a bit of experimenting before it actually sunk in, and I was able to accept that.
Yeah.
Looking back at some of the, choices that I made while still kind of in denial of that. But definitely still an ongoing process.
So I'm wondering, and you may have said this, my brain does crazy things, but it sounds like you've been gradually coming out through the years of being in school. Like, it doesn't sound like this happened in any, like, it sounds like it took several phases. So I'm wondering by which point, I guess, which level in school you were in, where you would say maybe you were owning it / you said you might as well come out to everyone since everybody's already talking about it. At what point what grade were you in when this was like
probably fall of
taking
freshman
place?
year of high school.
Okay.
It's just,
okay, cool.
I felt like that pressure building up of Like, I don't want to hide this. Now that I know this
Yeah.
about myself, I don't want to feel like I'm trying to hide all of this and live like something that I'm not. And
Yeah.
I also got a lot of external pressure from the people who knew, who were like, "Oh, you should just come out. Like, just come out." Which,
Yeah. Easy for y'all to say. Like, thanks.
yeah,
Sure, let me just go do that real quick.
yeah. So I
Right.
did, but I definitely was not all supportive, and came with a lot of emotional baggage from a lot of different people in my life.
Wow. Thanks, Carter. And I know that because I'm even thinking about more questions about this. This is definitely a conversation in of itself, just coming out in general. And I feel like maybe we can have an app where we talk about that. I do want to transition slightly into coming out as not even just a rare individual, but anyone with a medical something, chronically ill, disabled. When I was going through my healthcare journey, like we've already established, I didn't come out until junior year of high school, so 11th grade. And because of this, I was seen by primary care doctors, when I was younger, and I didn't tell them, hey, I'm gay, because I didn't know. But for those who may not know, I don't know how often people are going to the doctor or being admitted to the hospital, but I specifically recall every time being admitted, one of the intake questions, they tell your family or whoever you're with to step out of the room so they can ask you, hey, you gay? And, they're asking you, do you identify as anyone from the queer community? And I would just say no. I would say no for the longest time because I felt like it was none of their business, first of all. And I did not really understand or anticipate what I would need as I got older being a queer person. So up until, junior year, I wasn't really claiming it because I didn't know. I wasn't thinking about it. And then when I finally did come out and was still being seen by physicians, and that's when I started having this conflict where I would like for you all to know, but it feels almost like starting over. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like that somehow we seem to be almost forced into that feeling. But it's like you've been treating me for how many years? And all this time I've been saying, no, I'm not gay. And now the next visit I see you, I'm like, yeah, hella queer. And they're like, what? Right? I mean, they do ask you the question every single time. I'm guessing it's just to like verify, because as we all know, queer individuals can come out at any point in time. There's no timeline or deadline. There's no pressure. People should come out when they feel ready and they feel comfortable and safe to do so if they want to. But I started feeling like I was almost lying. Lying, and also, again, I was in my junior year of high school, so I graduated the next year and then I went to college. So this was about 2015. 2016, I am heading off to college on campus, and I'm newly gay. So I'm like, this is exciting. First of all, this is exciting because I get to figure out who I am and who I like. And like you were saying, hookup culture is real, and it's not. I always is a stretch, but I oftentimes hear hookup culture in like this negative light. But I would like to just establish the fact that a lot of us are figuring out who we are via hookup culture, and there is a safe way to do it. But I don't want anyone to feel like guilty about the way that they are discovering themselves. There should be no judgment because we're all doing it. Like, no one's going to sit down and tell you what to do. Like, we are not granted that option, unfortunately, unless you just have a really, blessed and connected and supportive family that just has your back like that. Or you have, like I said, an icon or a mentor who can teach you. But I was winging it. I was literally like, I'm graduating from high school. I'm gay. I only really saw one guy in high school, I talked to a couple, but only saw one guy, and I didn't really date. Like I didn't really, and growing up too. This also could have been, I don't want to say this is not for everybody, but growing up, I didn't date a lot of girls either. I had, you know, maybe less than a handful, but things never, signs are there's a thread. But I say this to say, when I came out and I was going to college, I did a lot of my self discovery through various men, different kinds of men, and it's also in this moment where I was, we're in college and they talk about sexual health. I knew that sexual health is very important. And I also know that in the gay community, HIV is a huge deal. And there are methods to protect us, and there's education out there. And I wanted to make sure that I was safe whenever I was um, going into these situations. If I need PrEP, I have to tell my doctor. Like, there's no way around it. I can't rob a pharmacy, so I have to ask my doctor, and I don't know how to ask my doctor for PrEP without telling my doctor that I'm gay. And although it should be noted that you do not have to be gay in order to get HIV. It's not a gay disease. So it shouldn't be a thing where if you ask if you're a man, or I don't know. I felt like as a young man approaching my male doctor or whoever about taking PrEP, they would put two and two together and say, Nate equals gay because he's asking for PrEP, and call me crazy. But I felt the need to come out prior to this conversation because I wanted to avoid any awkwardness or assumptions that were made. I wanted to kind of take that narrative into my own hands. So the way that I got into a place to come out to my doctors is when I realized that I had needs surrounding my actual life beyond rare disease that I wanted to have taken care of. And in order to make sure that I had peace of mind and was safe when I'm going and exploring and, as young adults do, hook up and figure out who we are, I wanted to be safe. I needed PrEP. So I ended up coming out to my physicians, who some of them had known me already. And then, I had to, after transplant, I had to get some new physicians because I was at a weird, awkward age where I was in the middle of transition of care. And some of my primary care doctors had to turn into adult doctors. So I will say for me, it was a lot easier, quote unquote, coming out to doctors who had already known me because I could introduce myself as Nate, the gay man who needed these things. And being an advocate at that point, I got to decide who I needed to take care of me. I got to choose my doctor. But when it came to physicians that I had already had, it was more of a difficult process because I was worried about the fact that they would think I had been lying the whole time, or they would feel like they knew me less because I'm now coming out and I've been this person all along. So that's kind of my experience in that realm. And I want to hear yours, Carter. So what you got?
Yeah, that's strange, that experience of us feeling like we're lying or hiding something when really it's just this assumption that like being straight and cis is a default and that shouldn't be on us. Like other people are assuming that that's not our problem.
Right.
But yeah, for me, I was out before I got any diagnosis. I had symptoms since I was a little kid, so it was always there, but they were always brushed off or downplayed or not really seen as a big deal. And so it wasn't until, when I was in college and things were just progressing more and more and more and getting worse, I started asking more questions, but I kept feeling like my queerness just kept getting pathologized, where I'd go in to talk about my chronic pain and they'd want to talk about like psychological problems related to gender identity. Or I'd come in like, hey, I'm having these weird reactions to things. And then it's, oh, you're looking for attention that you're not getting, and that's also related to you being non-binary and presenting this way. And the ways that I would present myself as a queer person, as a trans person, were becoming the focus of things with certain providers instead of actually taking the symptoms seriously. And so I got like a lot of just really contradictory medical advice that ended up making my diseases progress and get worse from, ignoring all the things that you're supposed to do when you have these chronic pains and wonky immune system stuff and neurological stuff and all that. And so that really influenced my journey, and being out before getting the diagnosis and the extra barriers of just trying to get taken seriously from providers who just didn't get it. And then also just the awkwardness of having to come out over and over again and not really knowing how someone's going to take it. Like, especially with sexual health, like you were mentioning, coming in for like regular STI testing and then having to explain like who my partners are. Yes, some of them are trans people. And then having them get weird about it, or being like polyamorous and having to try and explain that to them and get their whole ethical philosophy on it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to have to explain everything about who I am and who I love in order to get healthcare.
Right. I relate to that so hard, and I think you should say more things because I need you to elaborate on some. I just want to hear more of your story, but you reminded me of even beyond HIV and PrEP, like testing, like you said, being a responsible young adult who's actually caring and concerned about their sexual health. You're gonna go and you're gonna get tested for things. You're gonna make sure that you're good before you hop into bed with someone. You're gonna make sure you get preventative care. But yeah, when you get tested, especially for HIV, I every single time have been asked, how many partners have you had? Male. Like, they're asking me, have you been with men? And I don't know. I'm no medical professional. I did get a degree in health services management, and I went to nursing school for a blip. But I will not claim to be a medical professional. So I don't know the basis behind needing to know the exact identity of the person that I had been with. I just need to test me for this disease. Is it possible for you to test me without me having to like write down on this paper the last 20 people I've been with? Like, you know what I mean? So
like, I can understand talking about social determinants of health and like wanting to understand that, but sometimes the judgment of the person asking the questions and like the kind of shaming of like, oh, you should be like hooking up with people, like, or you shouldn't be seeing multiple people, like I didn't ask.
Right. And I'm also just wondering, like, are we bored? Like, is this like your lunchtime, or is this the tea? Like, are you guys gossiping about us when you leave? Like, I don't know if this is entertainment. Right. I'm just like, because I wonder like what it must be to work at those places and like, be testing people. Like, how many, I don't know. In a perfect world, it would be nice to think that people who hold these positions are caring for you without any judgment, but we don't live in such world. It's not a perfect world, and I am very well aware of the fact that there are people out there who are testing people and holding lots of judgment. And it's weird, especially like in college. I feel like, but not everybody is going to college or having this experience, but as a teenager, as a young adult, when you're coming out and you're recently out and you're discovering yourself, and it is just not very encouraging to consistently have to answer questions about, let me come in with a mic and interview you about your sexual partners. Like, you know what I mean? Who wants to do that? Nobody. So I don't know. Anyway, that just got me heated a little bit, but thank you for bringing that up, because that reminds me, it's not even just about PrEP, or it's just people are asking questions that they don't need to know. Those people, it's none of your business. I do not need to come out to you. But you know what I mean? To tested for a disease, I should not have to come out to you. For why? Because these aren't queer specific. It really irritates me.
I do wonder if we're like, I'm sure we're allowed to say, I don't want to disclose that, but it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, well, if it is, I missed out because I did not. I wasn't in a position. I've always answered truthfully. I don't know. There is kind of this dynamic where around certain healthcare professionals, you feel like you have to answer their questions. As an advocate with some experience, I will say that's not true. Everyone has the right to say no to anything, but at the time, this was pre-rare disease diagnosis. When I was on campus at college, I was at Towson University, and this was pre my HLH realization. So my voice wasn't fully developed at that point, and also, like you were saying, I didn't really feel the option to be like, pass. Next question, you know? So yeah. But I want to know, Carter, is there a strategy that you used? What helped you kind of get to a place like now? Are you comfortable with providers that you have? Are you able to feel like you can talk to them about things that you need from a queer perspective, from a sexual health perspective?
I think for the most part now, yes. I've had a few here and there where it's, they're the specialist that I can access for one of my diseases. So it's, like I can't just switch over to someone who's going to get me. But,
right.
They're decent enough that at least they're not like just sending me to psychiatry and ignoring me. So
yeah,
the bar is on the ground, but
it is.
At least
and I think it also. Go ahead, Carter. I'm sorry.
Oh, just at least there's that. Like, at least they're willing to see me and care about my disease, even if they're not going to understand me as a whole person.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning or discussing the fact that, like, the reason why, it's one side of it is it's a complicated process complicated in the sense that it shouldn't even have to be done. The whole idea of having to come out, and I say having lightly because not everyone has to come out. It's definitely a personal decision, but as someone who had specific needs and requests and wishes from my healthcare provider, I had to come out in order to make that conversation more comfortable. But it also, the just the fact that we can't assume we're going to get good feedback or good responses from these people that we tell. And to your point, some of these people, because we have rare conditions, right? And this is also tying into our community, there are limited number of people who can treat our diseases. And so sometimes it's a matter of weighing what is more important in that point in time. And will this physician who knows all about malaria disease be receptive to my queerness? And if I tell them that I'm queer, how will they react? Will that relationship still be strong enough to receive care from? Will they still want to treat me? Will I feel respected? And if not, do I have many other options besides this person to go get treated? What if this person is the only person in my community who treats this disease? Or what if there's like 2 people in the state? And I do want to just clarify something. There are 10,000 rare diseases, we did say that, but 300 million not Americans, 300 million people worldwide are impacted by rare disease, and 30 million Americans, which means that there are lots of individuals in rural areas who have a lack of providers to see. They have to travel long distances to receive care. This is a big problem for patients in the rare disease community. And you add on the layer of being queer. And so sometimes it's self-preservation. I need medical attention. Yeah. I need medical attention, and sometimes I can't really afford to be both queer and rare in this space because my life depends on it. And it's complicated, it's a lot, but it it's definitely worth noting that this is such an important area because of the fact that each of us have our own unique experiences, but there is a large chunk of the population that is needing care. We have lots of patients that are undiagnosed, or, like I said, only having access to a limited number of physicians. And then you have so many other factors, like throw Medicaid on top of that, throw throw financial burdens and coverage and support systems in that. And it's just a very it's complicated. It's not easy, and so I think it's important for us to acknowledge our experiences and having to come out twice or come out again. It's again and again, and it could even go on beyond that, depending on how many physicians you need to treat your disease. Not everyone is going to just require one. Some of these rare diseases require an endocrinologist or a neurologist or an oncologist. There's different types, and I've had more than one type of doctor, and I've had to come out to all of them. When I was finally diagnosed rare and I went back to school, whatever, and I was fully able to be both Nate and queer and rare and black and all the things, I made it a point that when I started going to therapy, I'm going to find a queer therapist because that's important to me. I need to now move forward in my life. When I was looking for my primary care doctor, I tried to find one that was queer, and I couldn't find one, but I made sure that I made calls and did the research to make sure that whoever I chose was accepting of queers, or was open, because I have the power to take my care into my own hands, and I get to decide. And so I just made sure that I had a queer therapist, so I could tell my queer therapist about all my childhood trauma, from relationships with my parents to relationships in school to coming out, and then all these things have a common thread. And I just feel like it's easier to take care of a patient as a whole being when you are fully allowed and have a space where you can be all versions of yourself, instead of being kind of trapped in this place where you have to seek out certain providers for certain aspects of your identity. So, Carter, what are you thinking? Do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I appreciated something that you mentioned about having like the choice, and there was a really good phrasing in there.
the power. No, just
the power to like have control over your care team and who you see and the circumstances. And I'm just glad that's something that you've had.
Yeah. I mean,
I had more of a thought, but it's gone now.
Do you have that power? I'm hoping that you have that power now too.
Yeah. I find it interesting because, like, these days I don't really have a choice in coming out, because, like, now that it's in my records, my name ends up, like, on my referrals. And also my doctors, like, switch my sex assigned at birth back and forth all the time. I don't know why. But, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is this carried over into how you access, like, non-rare care, or, like, more just generalized healthcare?
So, when I mentioned that there are multiple people on the care team for patients, I guess I can describe my situation as, like, having a primary care doctor that you basically go to for regular minor things. For those of you who aren't really familiar or versed in different types of physicians, primary care, you're kind of like first point of contact. But then there's like specialty care doctors. Because my condition was largely affecting my GI system, gastroenterologist is a type of doctor that I need to see, as well as nutritionist, therapist, and there's been various ones throughout the years. Oncologist was a big one when I was going through my chemo and my transplant. So, because, as we said, we as the patients have the power, I recognize that I have the power to choose, and I'm not going to overextend myself or over explain. This is the approach I take in life too. If you don't need to know, why am I going to feel like I need to tell you? Anyone I feel like, and I've never hid this, and I don't give a crap. Anyone who looks at me, I think, can tell that I'm queer, and I'm not mad at it. You know what I mean? If you have a genuine ask for me, ask me, and I'll answer honestly. But if you aren't directly involved in that area, I am not going to feel obligated to tell you anything because I don't know you like that, and it's none of your business. So, what I will say, my primary care doctor, I made sure to tell and look for that when searching for one because that's who I'm getting the prep from. I have to go to my primary care doctor and ask him for prep. He refills our prescription. So, yeah, he's going to know. Also, my bone marrow transplant doctor, I made sure I told because we had developed a close relationship after my whole diagnosis. And it was at a point in my life where I had, come out already. I had discovered who I was and I felt comfortable sharing that with him. But like my GI doctor, the new one I had to find since transitioning care into adulthood, he doesn't know, and I don't give a crap if he knows or not. You know what I mean? Like we're not having conversation in the doctor's office about like what we're doing. Like we don't have a relationship. So I get to choose. My therapist, I made sure I told, because I want someone to know all sides of me, so I don't really have to do a lot of work thinking about and like, drawing conclusions about what things could mean based on these different facets of my identity. But like my nutritionist, for example, who cares? Why does my nutritionist need to know if I'm queer? I just need you to help me make sure that my body is healthy and that I am consuming the right things and that I can function and have energy and live my life. So I have the power to choose, and I make sure that I choose people that would benefit me. Selfish or not, it's my care. You know what I mean? It's my care and it's my queerness. So I get to tell who I want and do what I want with it. So to your point, to your question, I have kind of really taken control over that identity and what it means to me and that intersection. And I've been able to selectively and strategically tell individuals who would be directly helping me in that area. So yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. That's,
Thanks.
It encourages me when I hear you share your story in that way and hear you making the choices for yourself and deciding how you want to show up and what you want to disclose and how, and being able to do that on your terms. And so I appreciate you sharing the way it looks in different pieces of your care coordination and how you're just captaining that. And
yeah, it's kind of crazy. This is another topic for another episode because we're getting close to time. But I will say that my advocacy method, I feel like, is borderline, I don't know, aggressive. I didn't create it to be aggressive, but when I experienced the sheer amount of constant disrespect by physicians and other healthcare professionals, inpatient, over the 12 years that I had been misdiagnosed. And when I discovered that secret that no one wants you to know is that patients have all the power. Where would doctors be if there were no patients? Another secret is that no one is going to really be there to tell you to speak up or that you have a voice other than those who don't have a stake in the game. But I've never had a provider who's been like, encouraging me to say what's on my mind. So I kind of got to this point where I had to get a little bit assertive, because sometimes if you're not assertive, people will walk over you or ignore you. I've had many instances where I've been very nice about it, trying to, use my voice and advocate for myself, and I've been ignored. And so it's like, all right. Also, being queer helps. I think queers are just like really great at saying what's on their mind, especially it's just a lot of turmoil, a lot of like struggle, we face a lot of barriers and conflict. So I think that contributes to the thick skin. And so when I kind of show up now, I'm like, I realize that I've been lied to all this time. Actually, it's almost giving wicked. You have no power. You have no power. I have all the power, right? And with that, I'm never again in my entire life letting any doctor tell me how or what I can do. Suggestions are always welcome, but I also know that my voice is just as important, if not more, than yours. And my needs will get across. I will make sure that before we leave, you understand what I need. I will not be pushed around by anybody. And yeah, I get to choose. No one is going to tell you that, but you get to choose. And I think there is power, and it empowers me to know that the cards are in my hands. If I don't like this doctor, I'm gonna go find a new one. I just know that like I don't have to settle. Now, sometimes it's a bit more difficult, like I said, because there's a limited number of providers in certain areas. And just referencing my own experience, Medicaid providers for there's not a lot of Medicaid providers in the area that can treat my condition. So sometimes your options are limited, but what I like to do is trust my gut. I always am looking for or expecting some level of respect, and that's baseline. But if there is not a physician that's less ideal, I will settle for one that will at least make sure that the prescriptions or the medications that I need are provided. So if this doctor doesn't believe all aspects of my rare disease journey, and this doctor doesn't really necessarily subscribe to or understand my queerness, and I don't have any other options, I will only leave if this doctor can't take care of my basic needs. But if this doctor is unable to provide the treatment that I need or the prescription that I need, rare or not, lacking or not, I'm not going to suffer. I will be looking elsewhere for somebody else who can at least provide those things for me. So, yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Carter, because it's taken a lot of work. But through the years, as I've been finding my voice, I have learned that when you, and it's a fortune that has to come to this, but when you pair using your voice with being, or like knowing how to tap into assertiveness when you need to. I'm not saying that I'm constantly assertive all the time, and I'm not out here trying to be an asshole, but when you pair your voice with the ability to stand up for yourself, to be assertive when you need to be confident, you kind of turn into this like, it provides power. Like I really feel like I show up in any space and I'm not worried if anyone is listening to me or not. If anyone is like hearing me, because I know for sure that I am going to be able to reach someone and get I'm not leaving without somebody understanding me. You know what I mean? So anyway, I've been talking. Carter, I want to hear final thoughts from you about this topic. I do want to say that just like last month, I'm so great at this. Happy Disability Pride, you guys. That's probably something we should have said at the beginning of the episode, but it is July 2025 and it is Disability Pride Month. And as two individuals who have disabilities who are queer, we're here to say happy Pride once again. And we thought this would be a great topic to discuss because of the cross between that healthcare aspect and the implications it has on us being queer and having to come out again and again and again. And I would just say that this goes beyond the medical field too. I feel like queers everywhere are having to come out multiple times for many reasons, and we need to put a stop to this. I'm no genius. I have no idea where to start with that, but we're here to let you know that if you've had to go through this or if you've experienced this, you're not alone. We have also struggled with this, and there is a way forward. So it's just exhausting. It's exhausting to have to do it so much. It's exhausting to consistently have to almost prove, or, you know, I don't want to have to keep telling people who I am before I can receive things that I need. Straight people don't have to do that. So I that needs to change. And so it's exhausting. I'm here, I relate, and Carter, I would love to hear your final thoughts on this.
Yeah, there is no timeline for this. There's no guidebook for it. We should never even have to come out if we don't want to. At least you should never have to compromise your safety to come out. You know, you don't have to come out. It doesn't make you any less queer. It doesn't make you any less part of the community. But it's still something that, you know, for those of us who do come out, it's never a one-time thing. It's over and over. And, you know, we feel that uncertainty. We get it. Nobody's alone in that. But happy Disability Pride Month. Keep being you. Be rare. Be real. Be radiant. Be you. Thanks for being here.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in to our second episode of Rare and Real. And we will be back next month with yet another episode. We have some exciting things planned. And yeah, enjoy the rest of July. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
I'm losing myself.
I can't think